Just picture this, a clear evening sky over India, November 12, 1996. High above the ground, two huge jets, both packed with people, are flying directly towards each other. They have no idea that their journeys are about to end in the exact same spot at the exact same time in what would become the deadliest mid-air collision in history.
On board those two planes were 349 people. And that's not just some statistic. That's 349 individual lives, every single one with families, hopes, and futures. That's the staggering human scale of the disaster that was about to unfold.
These were the chilling words from an American pilot who happened to be flying nearby. His call to air traffic control confirmed the absolute worst. A massive fireball in the sky right where two planes were supposed to be. It's a moment that just immediately makes you ask a terrifying question.
I mean, how does something like this even happen? We think of the sky as this huge empty space, and with all our modern radar and air traffic controllers guiding every move, a collision seems pretty much impossible. So to really understand what went so wrong that day, we first have to look at how the system is designed to keep planes safely apart.
Contrary to what you might think, the sky isn't some chaotic free-for-all. It's actually a super structured environment. It's built on these invisible roads and really strict rules, all designed for one single purpose, to keep airplanes from ever getting too close to each other. The whole system is built around this concept called an airway. And the easiest way to think about it is, well, it's just like a highway on the ground. Planes follow these set routes to keep all the traffic orderly and predictable. Now, on a highway, we stay safe by staying in our lanes, right? But in the sky, the most important tool for separation isn't horizontal, it's vertical. The system relies on this elegantly simple rule. On a lot of international airways, planes that are heading east fly at odd altitudes, so like 35,000 feet, and planes heading west fly at even altitudes, like 36,000 feet. This creates a standard 1,000-foot vertical cushion of safety. It's a foundational rule that keeps millions of us safe every single day. But on this one day, for some reason, it just didn't work.
So let's meet the two aircraft at the very heart of this tragedy. Their journey started in totally different countries. They were carrying different groups of people, but their paths were, well, destined to tragically cross in the sky over a small village in India. On one side, we have Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907, an Ilyushin Il-76. It was coming in to land in Delhi with 37 people on board, mostly merchants from Kyrgyzstan. And on the other, we have Saudia Flight 763, a massive Boeing 747 that had just taken off. It was packed with 312 people, most of them Indian laborers headed to Saudi Arabia for work. Two very different planes, carrying people from two very different worlds, now sharing the same slice of sky.
We're now entering the final critical minutes. Both of these planes are on the exact same airway, just heading in opposite directions, and they're under the guidance of a single air traffic controller. Every single thing that happens next is going to be scrutinized for decades to come.
So here's the timeline of those last 8 minutes. The key instructions and the responses from the pilots happen just moments apart. The Saudi flight gets cleared to climb up. The Kazakh flight gets cleared to descend down. In theory, they're being perfectly stacked, one above the other, with a safe buffer between them, exactly how it's supposed to work. Okay, now let's dig into those crucial communications.
At 6:36 p.m., the controller, VK Data, gives a standard instruction to the departing Saudi 747, climb and maintain 14,000 feet. Now, at this exact moment, the Kazakh flight is coming down towards them from above, and it's been assigned to level off at 15,000 feet. This creates that planned 1,000-foot buffer. So far, so good. 2 minutes later, the Saudi crew does exactly what they're supposed to do. They get to their assigned altitude, and they confirm it loud and clear. Maintain 140. Which is just pilot speak for 14,000 feet. They're holding their position, just waiting for the other plane to pass safely overhead. On their end, everything was done perfectly by the book. And this right here, is the single most critical moment of the entire event. At 6:39 p.m., the radio operator on the Kazakh flight reports that they have reached their assigned altitude of 15,000 feet. This is the message that tells the controller that the 1,000-foot safety buffer is intact. But as the black box would later reveal, that report was tragically, fatally wrong. The controller, believing the Kazakh plane is holding steady at 15,000, gives a standard traffic advisory. He tells them there's a 747 straight ahead, 10 miles away, at 14,000, and he asks them to let him know when they see it. This was it.
This was the final chance for human eyes to prevent the disaster the technology and procedure were about to miss. There was no reply.
In the aftermath, surrounded by all that wreckage, the investigation began, and the entire aviation world was asking the same exact question. The controllers set up a 1,000-foot gap. The pilots acknowledged their instructions. So, what on earth went wrong?
Yeah, that was the puzzle. 1,000 feet is a huge vertical distance. For two planes to hit each other, that entire buffer had to have just vanished. The answers, the devastating answers, would be locked away inside the black boxes, the cockpit voice and flight data recorders.
The most crucial finding was this. When the Kazakh radio operator reported being at 15,000 feet, the flight data recorder showed they were actually still above 16,000 feet and coming down fast. The pilot never leveled off. For reasons we'll just never fully know, he just kept ascending, busting right through his assigned altitude and flying directly into the path of that 747.
But hold on, why didn't that final traffic warning from the controller work? Well, this is where a second major factor comes into play, the language barrier. See, the Kazakh flight crew only spoke Russian. All of their communication had to go through a radio operator who was translating everything from English. So when the controller gave that final urgent warning, there was a delay. Precious seconds were just evaporating in translation. By the time the message was fully understood by the pilot, it was already too late.
And this really exposes the final layer of this tragedy, the systemic flaws. There was simply no margin for error in the system. That 1,000-foot separation, while it was technically allowed, left zero room for mistakes. But the biggest problem? The radar system in Delhi was basically archaic. It could show the controller where the planes were, but not how high they were. He had to rely completely on what the pilots told him. He was completely blinded to the fact that the Kazakh plane was descending into danger.
Out of this absolutely terrible loss came a really powerful push for change. The Charkhi-Dadri collision, as it's known, served as a brutal wake-up call to the entire global aviation community. It exposed critical weaknesses that just had to be fixed, and fixed immediately. So, 3 major life-saving changes came directly from this one disaster. First, something called TCAS. It's a system that lets planes basically talk to each other and warn pilots if they're too close. That became mandatory. Second, a global standard for English was put in place for all international pilots, getting rid of those deadly translation delays. And finally, airports were required to install modern radar that actually shows controllers and aircraft's altitude in real time, removing that fatal blind spot.
And so, we end right back where we started. 349 lives. Their loss was horrific, and at the end of the day, it was preventable. But the lessons that were learned from that dark day over India have, without a single doubt, saved thousands and thousands of lives in the decades since. The sky truly is safer because of them.
I think the ultimate takeaway here is that aviation safety is this process of constant learning, and it's often written in the wake of tragedy. The sky is immeasurably safer because of the lessons from November 12, 1996. But it does leave us with a pretty sobering question. What vulnerability haven't we seen yet, and how can we find it before it finds us?